Hello, and welcome to the Finding Your Academic Voice presentation. It is hoped that by the end of this presentation, you will have a better understanding of the following: the key components of academic writing, the foundations of a formal writing style, which includes the correct use of punctuation, grammar, and use of language, have a better understanding of how to use evidence to develop a credible and academic argument, and understand the different ways in which you can present and use your professional experience and knowledge when engaging in academic writing. Most of you will have experience of writing reports and other documents, but you may have very little experience of writing for an academic degree. As with all forms of communication, academic writing has a particular style, and we'll look at that throughout this presentation today. So, an academic style of writing should be formal, objective, and generally take a cautious or tentative approach, which invites further debate. It is very different from the approach taken in work-based reports or personal communications. This presentation will consider each of these aspects in turn, beginning with what is meant by a formal approach to writing. It is easier to describe what a formal academic style is not, rather than what it is. When writing in an academic style, you should not use slang or colloquialisms. A colloquial style is one you might use in a personal letter, email, or in everyday conversation. In addition, your writing style should not be chatty or journalistic. On this slide, there are some examples of phrases which have been used in essays and which are considered to not be appropriate. The grey formal style text gives you examples of how you can say the same thing in an academic rather than colloquial style. Taking one example, a lot of things need sorting out will be better phrased as there are a number of issues that need to be addressed. Take a look at the other examples on this slide. When using a formal style of writing, you should avoid contractions or abbreviations. For example, isn't should be replaced with is not. Abbreviations and exclamation marks are both more suited to a personal or informal style of writing, and so should be avoided when writing an academic assignment. The first person refers to the use of I or we, and this is not usually considered appropriate in academic writing because it can make your assignment sound too personal and informal. It also places the emphasis on your own opinions rather than on an objective approach, which has been explained in more detail later in this presentation. There are several ways of how to avoid using the first person. For instance, you can use the third person, it. For example, instead of I know the government is concerned about the riots, you could say it is evident that the government is concerned about the riots. Also, you can rewrite your sentence so that the object becomes the subject, often referred to as using the passive voice. It sounds complicated, but is not too difficult and is something that becomes much easier with practice. A good way of learning about how this is done in practice is to read your course textbooks or the material on Blackboard, as they will comprise of many useful examples. When you are putting forward your own argument, use demonstrative pronouns such as this, that, these, and those. For example, instead of starting I think that, use the phrase such as this suggests that. However, as you will see when you work through the program, there are some assignments that do not require you to write in such a formal style, such as a reflective account. However, in the assignment guidance, it will be very explicit and very clear whether you can write in the first person or not. However, if you are unsure about this, I would strongly recommend that you contact your academic tutor for clarification. A rhetorical question is one used for effect. No answer is required or expected, and the answer is usually obvious. Rhetorical questions should not be used in academic assignments because they, firstly, often express a personal opinion, and they can also interfere with the development of an argument supported by evidence. An example of a rhetorical question is, although early intervention schemes are expensive, aren't they better than putting young people in prison? An alternative and more appropriate way of expressing this idea would be, early intervention schemes are expensive, but evidence from the United States suggests that it is less costly than incarceration. And also following that statement with a citation or reference, i.e. Jones 2014. Having considered what is meant by a formal style of writing, we will now look at what is meant by being cautious or tentative. Academic views are usually expressed in a rather cautious or tentative style. This is because academics recognise that theories are always being revised, developed, and that research often throws up as many questions as it provides answers. This is particularly true in the social sciences, of which criminology is a part. When studying the ways in which people and societies behave and function, it is seldom possible to reach any clear conclusions that will never be subject to change or impacted by the discovery of more evidence and improved knowledge. Rather than expressing views in phrases such as the regulation of private security in the UK has resulted in a more secure and reliable service, in an academic paper you might say, for example, it could be argued that the regulation of the private sector in the UK has resulted in a more secure and reliable service. Alternatively, you could state Smith 2005 suggests that the regulation of the private security sector in the UK has resulted in a more reliable and secure service. This presentation will finish with a consideration of the need to be objective. We are going to look at what objectivity means, how to develop an objective style of writing, and how it differs from other styles of writing with which you may be familiar. The last part of this section of the presentation advises you on how to approach assignments which ask you to use your own work experience. As you will see by the definition on this slide, objectivity is the ability to consider or represent facts, information, etc. without being influenced by personal feelings or opinions. It is also impartial and has an element of detachment. Therefore, rather than basing your argument on your own ideas and opinions, academic study requires you to find and consider the evidence gained from research studies and the theories developed on the basis of this research and developed over time. In an academic essay, you will be putting forward an argument to support a point of view, and this should be supported by evidence from reliable sources, not by your personal opinions. Personal opinion is based on your own experience and understanding, but this is necessarily limited. When writing an academic assignment, you should rely on evidence drawn from a range of other sources, and you must be careful to select sources which are both reliable and appropriate. The reliability of academic sources is based on the peer review system, whereby published academic findings are reviewed or checked by other academics working in the field. Academic books and articles in academic journals are peer-reviewed, and the evidence and views, as well as possible theories expressed in these sources, can be used to support your argument. What are put forward as facts are often opinions and not supported by evidence. For example, Someone might claim in a newspaper article or on a personal website that it is a fact that CCTV prevents crime, when you will know from your studies that this view is not always supported by the available evidence, or that it is only sometimes true in some circumstances. This is why it is important to identify reliable sources of evidence and theory. For further advice on how to evaluate the reliability of sources, you should read the Study Skills Guide, Evaluating Online Sources. Being objective means considering the evidence and looking at a range of opinions. Academic theory is based on argument and debate. Therefore, the views put forward in academic books and papers will often contradict each other and challenge the position taken by other academics. The first example here on the left-hand side of the slide illustrates the way in which official accounts of events and reports of incidents will often reflect opposing or conflicting views of what happened or who is responsible. When you come to write an essay and formulate your own arguments, it is important that you consider alternative viewpoints and recognise that there is often not a clear and unambiguous account which can be relied on absolutely. For example, in addition to evidence available at the time of an event, other evidence may come to light later, which can result in people reaching quite different conclusions. The second example on the right-hand side of this slide reflects conflicting views by academics on a particular method of research. Theories are developed over time by this type of academic debate, and again, it is important that you understand that there is no one agreed theory on any topic. When you are writing an assignment, you should weigh up the available evidence and use this to develop and support your own argument. An approach which will help you to present an objective view is to find academic theory which supports your viewpoint. Instead of saying, "I think that," you can then say, "Jones 2006 argues that," or "Clare et al. 2013 suggests that." In this way, you identify and discuss relevant theories rather than relying on your own ideas and opinions. The last part of this presentation looks at some of the problems you may encounter when you use your own experiences or write about your own organisation. In some assignments, you will be asked to base an essay or report on your own organisation or one with which you are familiar. In others, you may want to use your own organisation or your own experience as a case study or as an example to illustrate an argument. Many of you will be studying topics which are part of your everyday work experience and will have built up considerable knowledge and expertise of these areas. While you may be familiar with using evidence in a report or work-based evaluation, when submitting work for your degree course, you must make sure you use an academic style of writing as explained earlier in this presentation. Only present your work as a report if asked to do so, and that will be very clear within the assignment, guidance and information that is provided to you. However, again, if you are unsure of the style of writing to adopt, contact your academic tutor to clarify. When you write from your own experience, it is very easy to express ideas in terms of your own feelings and opinions. You may feel very strongly about particular events or viewpoints, and this can be reflected in your writing when you express your emotions or make very strong, sweeping or generalized statements. For example, you might feel that people who commit crimes against children should always be given a long prison sentence, or that you cannot blame a security guard for fighting back when under fire. These are valid as personal opinions, but in an academic piece of writing, you must take a step back and look at the situation objectively. This means taking other views into account and considering wider issues, reliable evidence, and theories put forward by academics based on objective research. Although your own experiences present a valid perspective of an event or situation, it is important to remember that your own experience of events or situations will often be very different from that of other people who were there at the time, and that there will almost certainly be factors which affect the situation of which you are unaware. First-hand experience provides an important perspective, but it is not necessarily the most accurate or the most informed, and normally should not be used to support an academic argument. You should provide references where possible. For example, you may be able to provide references to company policies, guidance, and as previously mentioned, research findings or chapters in books, etc., that are considered to be reliable and credible. This presentation ends with 2 examples of writing for you to compare. The passage on this slide is an example of a paragraph written in a non-academic style. Read it carefully and decide why it has been described as non-academic. In this paragraph, the author says much the same as the writer of the non-academic paragraph on the previous slide, but it is written in quite a different style. Think about what it is about the paragraph that leads it to being described as academic. I hope that at the end of this presentation you now have a much better idea of what we mean by an academic style of writing, and of how you can use your own experiences in a way that is appropriate in an academic assignment. If on your assignment feedback the marker comments on your use of colloquialisms, the first person, or reliance on personal opinions, I hope that you now have a better idea of what this means and how you can put it right. And to do that, you may want to come back and revisit this presentation or discuss the possible issues raised with your academic tutor or your fellow students within the group discussion boards or through other means. There are various sources of useful information that are provided by the university as well as the department, and there have been a number listed there. And you can find a lot of these sources within the Learning Support section on Blackboard. However, if you are at any point unsure of how you can access these resources, or you are unsure of any of the points raised within this presentation, you can always contact your academic tutor.